Napoli fans around the world, welcome to Napoli Talk. Napoli have secured the signing of Swedish midfielder Jens Cajuste this week, but I want you to cast your mind back not to this transfer window, but the transfer window of 1952. And that's because this video is all about another Swedish player that has played for Napoli, and I'm taking the opportunity that we have a Swedish player for us now to go over the story of Hasse Jeppson at Napoli. The story starts in 1925 in a Swedish town near Gothenburg called Kungsbacka, because that is where Jeppson was born. Obviously, we're not gonna go over his entire childhood here, but when he becomes a bit older, he goes and starts playing for Swedish side Djurgården, and at the time, he is an amateur player for them. That means that Djurgården does not actually give him a salary. And this is something that's actually quite common in Sweden at the time, because you could not play for the Swedish national team if you were a professional player, if you were given a salary. So many players decided to stay as amateurs in order to play for the national team. In Jeppson's case, he was also a great tennis player, top 10 in Sweden, and for that he also needed to be an amateur. So he decided to not get a salary while playing for Djurgården. Instead, he had a regular 9-to-5 job. But in the meantime, he scored 58 goals in 51 appearances for the Swedish side. And while his Swedish compatriots such as Nordahl were banging in goals as professionals in Italy, I mean, we're talking 225 goals in 291 games, Sweden were left with a huge gap, but Jeppson was able to fill that. 9 goals in 12 games, including 2 goals in the 1950 World Cup against Italy, which is a foreshadowing of things to come in his future life. He led Sweden to a 3rd place in the 1950 World Cup, and that caught the attention of everybody around the world for the first time. But Jeppson remained an amateur player, and he remained working at his previous job, who sent him to England. And that's where he met the Charlton Athletic owner, and the owner convinced him to come play for Charlton, help them win their relegation battle with about 10 games to go. In that period, Jeppson scores on his debut in the 89th minute against Sheffield Wednesday in a relegation battle game, then goes on to score against Stoke, against Wolves, against Chelsea, against Liverpool, and finally a hat-trick away from home at Arsenal in a famous 5-2 win, Arsenal's worst defeat at home in 33 years at the time. And all this while he still didn't know any English. Foreigners did not really play internationally, but Jeppson came in and stole the show. And this obviously caught the attention of everybody in world football yet again, including Atalanta, who were struggling in the Italian league. They were about to face a relegation scrap themselves, and they needed someone to bang in the goals. And they decide to convince Jeppson to renounce his status as an amateur footballer, renounce his national team, and become a salaried player for Atalanta. Jeppson's first season at Atalanta was a huge success. Atalanta managed to save themselves comfortably in 12th place, and he scored 22 goals in 27 games, including in his final few games 4 goals and then a hat-trick in the penultimate game of the season. We are literally talking about the 1952 Erling Haaland of the time. He was the next big superstar in world football. And here's where the summer transfer market of 1952 comes in a time where Fabrizio Romano didn't exist to give you the latest news. But it was a time when Inter Milan, one of the favorites of the Serie A, wanted to buy Jeppson, but they faced competition from none other than Napoli, a team that was lurking around the mid-table at the time, who had never won a title obviously before. and they decided that they were going to get Jeppson because the Napoli owner of the time, Achille Lauro, he was running for mayor, and his slogan was "Make Napoli great in a great Naples," or something like that. Pretty much the OG "Make America Great Again," but related to Napoli. And like any politician with a questionable past, he decided that the best way to win over some votes for the election was to use a bit of sports washing. And so he built a team that propelled Napoli as favorites for the next year's Serie A campaign, and it included none other than the golden boy at that time, Hasse Jeppson, for a record-breaking 105 million lire, which you guys don't know what that means, but I checked, and it's the equivalent in today's money of 1.7 million euros. But you have to remember, this is a time when people were still playing around the world for free. Actually, 75 million went to Atalanta, and 30 million went to Jeppson, where he requested that goes straight to his Swiss bank account. And it's because of that anecdote, and because Napoli obliterated the transfer record at the time, he became known as Il Banco di Napoli, the Bank of Naples, because he was literally worth just as much as the Bank of Naples. This was a huge sign of intent from Napoli, the second time actually that they broke the world transfer record, the first time coming in 1930. Huge sign of intent. They built a star-studded team, and everything was poised to make it a great Serie A campaign in 1952-53. Unfortunately, Napoli gets off to a really slow start, with Jeppson not even scoring until October. And for that reason, the Napoli coach at the time hands in his resignation, which was then discarded by Napoli, so he had to stay on board. But it was a slow start and a very inconsistent campaign, even when Jeppson started scoring. 14 goals again this season, way less than what he was averaging at Atalanta, and Napoli finished the season in a disappointing 4th spot, which at the time was their 3rd best ever result. But when you went and you broke the transfer record at the time, you expect much better than that. Jeppson's second season at Napoli was slightly better. 20 goals, finished second behind Nordal with 23, and these 20 goals included some big ones like the ones against Juventus or the 4 that he scored against his former club Atalanta. Talk about being ungrateful, right? Anyways, even after a better season by Jeppson, Napoli finished in 5th, and that's because the president was just bringing together all these different superstars, but it wasn't a cohesive team. They didn't gel together, they didn't play well, they didn't fit each other's styles, but that continued for another 2 seasons. The best example is Jeppson and Luis Vinicio, another great Napoli striker, playing together for 1 season, where in the 16 games that they played together up top, only once did they score in the same game, and that was an 8-1 win against a very poor side. The problem with this team was not only that it was very badly assembled, but it was also the inconsistency of some of the players, including guys like Jeppson, who was known to score 3 or 4 in 1 game and then ghost for the next few. But all in all, in the 4 years that Jeppson was there, he managed 52 goals in 112 games. Not bad, and that propelled him to one of Napoli's top goal scorers at the time. He then moved to Torino at the age of 30, where after 1 season he finished his time in Italy. In the end, I guess what this video is trying to say is that it's because of Jeppson and because of Napoli that we have modern football, that we have the Fabrizio Romanos, that we have Saudi Arabia buying players for 200 million, or trying to buy players for 200 million. And that all started in the summer of 1952 when Napoli bought the Swedish boy Jeppson. And us buying a guy like Jans Cajuste, it was the perfect opportunity for me to bring this story to you. If you want more stories like these, drop a comment below, smash that like button and subscribe. I hope you guys like this one, And until next time, Forza Napoli sempre. Ciao.